Hello, and welcome to Crafting a Revolution, the podcast. My name is Katie Freeman, and I'm your host. Every Wednesday and Friday, I am bringing you interviews of female and non-binary makers of all kinds from all over the world. And today's guest is Seven Bailey out of the Twin Cities. Now, Seven, you may recognize from the recently released show on Netflix, Metal Shop Masters. I kind of got hooked up with Seven after watching slash binging all of that show because a former podcast guest was on the show as well. That was Leah. And I was chatting with Leah all about the show. And she mentioned that Seven would be an awesome guest. And you know what? I was thinking the exact same thing. So happy to be able to get to chat with Seven, just a fabulous human being. So I had truly a great time chatting with them. So like I mentioned, Seven lives in the Twin Cities on the Metal Shop Masters show on Netflix, a welder, fabricator, artist, just, you know, all into metal all the time, pretty much. So I won't give too much more than that away because it's just such a great interview, and I'm happy to have you here to listen to it. But before we hop into the interview with Seven, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the Revolution Pod Squad over on Patreon. So thank you so much, Lee at Lee Runyon, Annette, 513 Woodworks, Katie Thompson, Women of Woodworking, Kevin, Lefty's Workshop, Christy Twisted Twine, Jeremy at Jeremy Spees, Sammy at Go Sammy Lee, Sven Dwarf Sized Workshop, Rachel Moody Makes, Bonnie Tool Mom Bonnie, toolmomstore.com, Laura Oakley Soap Company, Mary Lou Made by Mary Lou, Brandy Studio Obey, Lee the Rainbow Carver, Ellen Little Bear Furniture, and Ethan Carter Designs. Thank you all so very much for your continued and ongoing support, helping me to produce 2 episodes a week every week. If you would like to get your name added to this list, you certainly can. Just head on over to patreon.com/crafting a revolution. Check out the different tier levels over there, and that come with different swag options, and you will get your name added to the list that gets thanked at the start of every episode every week. All right, let's head on into this awesome interview with Seven Bailey. I usually like to start by having my guests introduce themselves. So would you be up to doing that for me?
Sure.
Yeah.
Right now. All right.
Yeah.
My name is Seven Bailey, and I am an artist, metal fabricator, welder, certified welding inspector, educator, kind of do anything involving metal fabrication is my jam. I've been obsessed with it since forever.
Awesome.
I'm based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Yes, I am I always get really kind of geeked out when I get to have other guests on who are in the Midwest, because I'm in Eastern Iowa. So we've done a couple like family trips, to the Twin Cities and stuff. It's like 5 hours, which isn't a terrible drive. So yeah, I really love the Twin City area.
Oh yeah, gorgeous.
Yes. So I like to also start by asking a pretty broad question, which is, what's your story? Like, where did you kind of grow up, and then how'd you get into this world of metal fabrication?
All right. Well, my metal fabrication story probably started when I was, I think, about the age of, I want to say I had to have been 4 or 5. And back in the day, because I'm 40, so this, I'm not a baby. Luckily, this is preserving well, so I look younger than I actually am. I had the opportunity to watch Flashdance, and I believe it was on Laserdisc at the time. And Laserdisc last all of probably 3 years before people decided that they were ridiculous. And I remember seeing Flashdance, and first off, just being obsessed with Jennifer Beals because she's gorgeous,
Mhm.
and brown and intriguing. But then, the movie progresses and she's in a male dominant industry of welding. Of course, what they were doing in that movie was not actual welding. And every time I see it now, I'm literally embarrassed because I'm just like, is this what people think? It looks like trash, but
Yes.
doesn't matter. I was intrigued by that, as well as the dance and striptease aspect of flash dance. It's definitely one of those things where it's a queer root for me.
Mhm.
And so that always stuck in the back of my mind, that whatever that thing that she was doing with metal was exciting to me.
Mm.
And so I had an opportunity, and you might have experienced this as well, being from the Midwest and all of the farm, we're farm country, right?
Mhm.
And we have the opportunity in high school to do things like wood shop and agriculture
Mhm.
and things like automotive and metal fabrication. And so I took all of those things. And as soon as I got into metal fabrication, I was like, ooh, yep, yep, this is still really exciting to me. I love every aspect of it. I want to do more. I'd always been really heavily, I was an only child up until the age of, or I'd say around 11. And so I spent a lot of time by myself. It was, heavily into like building things. So Legos and art-based things. So painting and drawing and stuff
Mhm.
like that. Those were my creative outlets. Those were the ways that I got to express myself and keep myself entertained, right? So in high school, I took all the arts courses as well. And as I kind of progressed forward, I thought, wait a second, how can I combine these things together, right? And I kind of got fixated into, well, when I graduate high school, maybe I need to go to college for studio art. And if I do studio art, my mom was very into pushing, I think, in 1999, people are pushing 4 year. You got to go to school, you got
Mhm.
to get a 4 year degree. And it's different now, thankfully, but that was the obsession back then. And so I said, okay, I'll do studio art and I will do an emphasis on metal sculpture. Well, I lasted about a year in college, and my head wasn't in the right place at the time. I had lost my first love in a tragic car accident, and I just was not in a good space. And I knew that I didn't want to. I didn't have anything to give, as far as education was concerned, and so I dropped out. I had this really great conversation though with my instructors at the time about what I wanted to do. And they said, you don't need to go to school for that. We believe that you're going to be just fine. Do your thing, live your life. And I was so grateful for these people that I looked up to saying it was okay. And I didn't have to do these things that society at the time was telling you
Mhm.
had to do to be successful. So dropped out and kind of knocked around a bit from Winona, Minnesota, where I grew up, to Minneapolis and found my way to California. Um, I mostly wanted to get to California because you could probably relate. You come from small town Midwest, you want to get the hell out. You're
Yep.
like, I need to find my people. I need
Yep.
to be young and queer and have all of the experiences. Let's go to California.
Yep.
And so I gratefully I made it to California, and I took a job at an art store, staying true to art. And I was there for probably like 2 years. And I remember having this really cool conversation with another person there saying, I need to figure out what I'm going to do for a career. I need to figure out what I want to do with my life, because I want to be able to like buy a home someday and be able to pay bills. And what if I want a family and, big people stuff, right? Grown up
Mhm.
stuff. And so I said, I'm going to go back to what I know spoke to my heart, and I'm going to go to metal fabrication. I want to be a welder. And so my friend at the time was like, dude, that's awesome. Do it. And within 2 weeks, I um, quit my job, and I had an opportunity we had to find jobs on Craigslist back in the day.
Mhm.
That was a good hub before like Indeed and Monster
Yep.
and all
Yep.
of that. And I found a guy who ran a small company in heating and cooling. And so we did a lot of R&D work, a lot of stainless fabrication, a lot of aluminum fabrication. And I said, this is my background. I've got very little welding experience, but I can tell you that I can do this job. And I sold it. Like, don't give me an interview, because if I get in there for an interview, I'm going to seal the deal. And so 2 hours later, he says to me, you come back tomorrow. I'm going to put you under the hood. You're going to weld for the full day. And if you can weld by the end of the day, I'm going to give you this job. Sweet. Go home. I immediately went out, bought a new hood, bought the gear. I got, a $300 textbook because I was going to be TIG welding, and I had never TIG welded before in my life. And I was like, let me just get this in. So I just sucked up everything I could in that moment and sat down. I had an old school, an OG welder sit down with me and show me. And I was welding like, I get back and I'm like, man, I think if I was lucky, it was 10 gauge, but honestly, it was probably like 14 or something like that. I mean, it was tiny,
Yep.
thin, and I was welding around 1/4-inch tubes while purging, having to go around and make these beautiful welds, not burning up the chromium and all that kind of stuff. And by the end of the day, I was doing it. And I think that there are certain things that sometimes people are just meant to do. I clearly was meant to do this because I've in my 6 years of on straight just education side of it, I've never seen anything like that where somebody's just picked it up and went. And I thought, okay, cool, I've got this. And so I got the job. And that really, really started my career in welding and metal fabrication. But it wasn't until further along the road did I get into the more artistic side of things. And that's really been the past 10 years.
Okay. Did you do like, what brought you back to the Midwest?
Oh, Midwest. Well, to be honest, went back to the Midwest. I was in a relationship. So I was in a domestic partnership from the age of like 20. We were together from 21 until 29. I spent my 20s working and being in a relationship and raising a kid. And I'm grateful that I got to do it while I was young and I was able to like provide and handle all of those things. But when our relationship finally came to an end, I kind of felt a little bit lost. I didn't really know my place anymore. And I knew I was not happy, and I felt depressed. And I reached out to friends of mine and I said, I'm in a bad space. I also was heavily drinking, and I said, I think I need to first get sober. And second, I need to just come home and reset myself. And so that's exactly what I did. I came home and reset myself. And I'm so happy that I made that choice for myself. And so I made it back here.
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely say a lot of that would resonate in the sense of Midwest kid growing up, knowing I was queer and not knowing that wasn't fully accepted in, in small town, or even, I mean, Iowa doesn't really have any large towns, but in the Midwest, and it was always like out on the horizon, right? If you go to California, everything's better there. Like,
right.
Like the assumption that you're like automatically accepted and stuff. So, I mean, I ended up spending 4.5 years in Southern California with my wife. Like, we lived out there, and learned by that experience that unless you're in like San Francisco, San Diego, LA, like in the big cities, like the rest of the state is still basically like Iowa. Yeah. So learned that lesson. But yeah, it was definitely a queer kid's dream moving out to California.
Absolutely.
So what, I guess, when you came back and you did the reset, is that when you started exploring kind of the artistic side of welding?
Yeah. So, gosh, so I came back and it was like 2011, and I immediately went to go find work. When I left California, I was in management. So I no longer was fabricating all of the time. I mean, every once in a while I'd get in there and I'd still, fabricate, but I got really heavily involved in the management side of things, which I really love. Like I love project management, organization, getting stuff done. And I think you are that much better if you have a clear understanding of how to do those things, right?
Yep.
And so I immediately found some work up here, and I simultaneously reached out to a friend of mine who was here and was just talking about, metal fabrication and welding in general. And they said, "Oh, I have to introduce you to somebody." And I said, "Oh, yeah? Yeah, yeah, she's really great. And I think you guys will get along, and, maybe you can get into some of the stuff that she's into." Her name's Heather Doyle, and she is a artist and the artistic director of the Chicago Avenue Fire Arts Center here in Minneapolis.
Okay.
And I walked in not knowing her, introduced myself. We started talking. She was just really starting to set up the facility, and I offered my help. I said, "Hey, I can help you in any which way. I know a lot about setting up shops and whatnot. And also, if you need any help on the fab side, like let me know." And she reached out to me and she said, "Yeah, actually, I do have a job." And so
Mhm.
she called me in on a job, and she said, "This is what I'm about." She's all art world, and brought me in, and we had such a good time. And she was impressed with, my technique and my fab knowledge, that she was just like, "Do you want to work together?" And I was like, "Yes." Of course.
Mhm.
And really through Heather and working in the partnership with her through Industrial, that's what we're called. We do everything from private commissions to, big grant funded pieces for the city. And it has been an absolute dream come true to be able to do that. I wouldn't be where I am or do the things that I do without Heather. Heather, like the universe gifted me Heather, and I lovingly refer to her as my work wife.
Mhm.
Because she absolutely is. She has my heart. She has my utmost respect, and we continue to work together to this day. And man, she's cultivated such a beautiful community of artists and fabricators out here that it's very special.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I'm just so damned lucky to have that work life of mine. And it's funny too, because I think back to college, where it was, I'm gonna drop out, and then maybe I won't be maybe I won't be an artist. Maybe I won't do any sculptures. Maybe, that's just not in the cards for me. And it took me coming back home to work on myself and to get myself together to then invite these other humans into my life, right? That are doing these things that I want to be able to do, and sharing these things with me, right?
Mhm.
And that's something that I carry with me as I take on, different projects outside of industrial, is that I want to honor sharing these experiences, especially with women. It's number one priority for me is if I can support, aid, and help women, and especially Black women in
Mhm.
the world of art and fabrication. I'm going to use any platform or opportunities that I have to be able to do that.
Mhm.
It's just so damn important.
Yeah. Hey makers, today's episode is sponsored in part by toolmomstore.com. At toolmomstore.com, you can find any and all tool-based merchandise for all genders, all sizes. They've got mugs, they've got shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. I have one of the shirts myself that has the hashtag woodwork her on it. And I also have a couple of the mugs that define what and who is a tool chick. So super excited with the merchandise that I have. I know that you will be satisfied as well. And also, great discount for those of you who listen to the podcast. At checkout, if you enter the code MAKERMOM, you will get a 20% discount off any of the merchandise that you buy. So that's just toolmomstore.com. All right, let's head back into the action. Trying to decide which way I want to go with this first.
No.
I want to, I guess, follow a little bit further down the sculpture path and ask, like, in collaboration there, out on your own, doing pieces, for the city and stuff, are you doing it all from like design stage through to fabrication, or is it, depending on the project, you're gonna be more heavy on one side versus the other?
Yep. I would say it's project to project. Sometimes, people will contact me and say, I want this thing, you design and, do that. And then sometimes people call me and they're like, I just need somebody to manage this project because I don't know how I'm going to be able to do that. Or I need somebody on this project to train others to do this project as well. And so one of the things about the Fire Arts Center is, a lot of the programs that are run, it's written in that we are training and educating, community on how to fabricate and to create these things. I mean, that's the beauty of that. And so, yeah, it really ebbs and flows. A lot of times what happens more than anything is an artist will come up with something and then they go, I want it made out of metal. And then I go, cool. And then I have to extract, what it is that they think that they want and what actually makes sense on that fabrication side. And I think it's one of the reasons why Heather and I balance each other out so well is that she is full on artist 24/7. I have my fab brain is a big chunk of my existence. The artist brain is there, but I'm already thinking about, but wait, how can I make this happen?
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of times people get excited. And so when I'm working on projects like, a good example would be the Purple Raindrop. The artist had, the Purple Raindrop drawn out and it was drafted. And then, they reached out to Heather and I, and, Heather's like, well, Seven, we should make this out of sheet metal. And I said, of course, we're going to make it out of sheet metal, but we're going to have to make this frame within this sheet metal because of X, Y, and Z. And then we just kind of build from there. Nimbus is another good example where Tristan, Nimbus is huge, by the way. It's like 40 feet in diameter, I believe. And Tristan brought me down to Georgia, and it was kind of like in a skeleton, and he had routed how he wanted to lay everything out. And he said, okay, this is kind of what I have here. Do you want to do this project? We've started. Do you want to do this project? And I said, well, first off, we're going to have to take these apart. And we have to take these welds apart because when we're talking about big structural sculptures, we're doing those to code, right? And so I'm breaking it down, and the CWI in me goes, well, this is not going to work. We can't do that, but we're going to do this instead. And then we're going to, problem solve how we're going to create certain curvatures and whatnot. And so then we're just processing and doing and building. And it's so fun to be able to bring the artists along for the ride, right? To be very hands-on, so they know that it isn't just their brainchild. They've also created that thing, right? It's almost like being a vessel, right? To help facilitate bringing somebody's vision to a reality. For me, that's the most important thing. I think I would say that it is truly my purpose in life to elevate, empower, and help other humans. And it just so happens that metal sculpture is just my jam, and I'm into it. And and that's what I get to deliver. And I think it's really, really exciting.
Yeah. I just think I asked that question in particular because I've had some other metal artists on, as guests on the podcast. And it was through one that I learned about this world of like, somebody can be an artist and design this piece of artwork and then not fabricate it themselves.
Correct.
Like, and that just, and it still does, just blows my mind, because at least in my art world is wood art world, which is like, well, of course, if I design it, I'm going to make it. Like the
correct
part of the joy to me is the making, not just the dreaming up what I want to make type thing. And I would say my brain probably follows yours more in the sense of, once I come up with the concept, my first thing is like, well, how am I going to make it? And that may change the design. If I cannot figure out how I'm going to actually make that part work, then I either have to table it for that design and try it later. It's going to make changes.
Yeah, absolutely. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. It's, I would say that's about 50-50 on that.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then you do it, like, that is not working.
Nope.
Scrap it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, 3 or 4 tries on trying to figure out what's going to work to achieve what it is that's up in here. And I think that's what's so challenging sometimes, is that what we have up here doesn't always come out quite physically the way that we dream them up. And I think that's really the case for a lot of artists that dream big and go into this avenue of work. Oh, I want to do metal, but I don't do metal.
Right.
They're like, I want to do metal, but I don't do it.
Yeah.
So who's going to do this metal? Like, who's going to understand artist brain, but then making it happen?
Yep.
And like I said, that tends to be a good majority of my work. It's very rare that I gotta just sit down and make something for myself, because I'm constantly making for others. But like I said, the balance for me, and it's different for every artist, the balance for me is nothing brings me more joy than helping others.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I'm going to pivot to the other path that I wanted to go down. And,
sure.
And I will preface this with, obviously, share as much or as little as you feel comfortable in sharing. But so you identify as non-binary now.
Yep.
Am I correct in presuming you were assigned female at birth?
Correct.
Okay. So what has that journey been like, that progression, and how do you feel like that's like interacted with your work?
Yeah. It's been a wild journey. I was thinking about this actually I was driving from work and getting home so I could do this with you. And I was just thinking about my experience and how grateful I am to be in a place of my life at age 40 to finally go, you know what? I'm non-binary. This is exactly who I am. And I think that as a kid, I never related with being identified as a female, or it always just didn't sit well with me. And nothing that I ever did was I didn't play with dolls. I didn't want anything to do with dresses. I never wanted long hair. I mean, all of those things, like, it just didn't feel like me. And I remember when I finally grew boobs, I was just devastated. And it took me a long time because I was a late bloomer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I remember running around at like topless at like 11, and one of my cousins being like, listen, you can't do that. And I'm like, why not?
Yeah.
Because I didn't have any boobs, so it didn't matter. I was like, why not? She's like, that's not appropriate. And I think I tried to make peace. I definitely realized I was queer at a young age. And I came out to my parents when I was like 15, 16, I think 15. I wasn't driving yet. And I just said that I love people, and, I was fine where I was at. And I thought that that was enough for me. And truth be told, up until about, 2020, I thought to myself, I see all of these young folks now, not that I'm that old, but I am.
Right.
I see all these young folks now that are so open and able to just, oh, I'm non-binary. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I feel like that. And it's okay. And it's such a beautiful thing. It is so beautiful and wonderful. And I think to myself, like, had I had that as a younger human, I definitely would have come out a long time ago as non-binary for sure. But then, COVID happened. And here in Minneapolis, following George Floyd's murder, the uprising happened. And we experienced a lot of deep trauma. We were dealing with a lot of grief. We were still in isolation and all of those things. And being Black for me, I'm sitting here. I am, I'm in the center. I'm 3 blocks from George Floyd Square. I am in my house, losing my mind and not feeling okay. And I was thinking about all of the things that didn't feel okay to me. And one of the things that I'd struggled with for so long that didn't feel okay was I really truly did not or do not identify as a woman. Now, I am, however, grateful for the years that I did, identify as a woman, because I used that space to support and promote women in general. So I don't, it's like there's no regrets there. I don't go, oh, it was a tortured existence, because I wasn't tortured, but 2020 made me go, I'm going to make sure that the rest of my existence is exactly how I want my existence. Nothing is guaranteed. This world is kind of a shit show. I'm going to do all of the things so I can feel the most authentically me. And that was such a weight that I didn't realize that I had. I'm a really happy-go-lucky human, but I did have that internally. And it was scary to come out to my wife. Is the one thing that we really didn't talk about. I did talk about, wanting top surgery before, just because I've never liked, having breasts. And once I did, she says to me, she goes, I mean, I've been waiting. And I was like, you could have, but
you could have asked, right?
And I was like, babe, why didn't you say something? But like, the reality is, you have to come to terms with it on your own. And the moment I was able to talk to my wife about that, I was just like happy and overjoyed about that. And I'm so glad I finally felt safe and okay enough to do it.
Yeah. I'm glad you had that space.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
It's weird how it came about.
Yeah. I feel like, though, like, at least if I believe social media, I feel like 2020 was a year that a lot of people finally, like, I think because they were with themselves and had nobody else necessarily in a lot of ways to, like, converse with or things to intentionally distract themselves,
Correct.
I think a lot of people, it's like, maybe came more to terms with their sexuality and their gender. And like, I feel like it happened for a lot of people.
It really did. And it's so neat to see, how many humans are, so many humans are coming out, and that's really great. And not just coming out with their gender identities, but, sexuality, Polylife has been another thing for folks that I've noticed that is definitely, I wouldn't say it's trending, but because we all reevaluated our existence and how we're living our lives within the pandemic, people are exploring that, and it's more socially acceptable. All of these things are more socially acceptable. And with that, people now get to go, yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm that too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. we're still in a pandemic. So I can't
Yes,
say we're out of a pandemic, but we're still in a
unfortunately.
pandemic. Um, how have you seen the, getting fully comfortable growing into your full self reflected in your work as as you start to, I would imagine you're at least able to start doing a little bit more work now, um, even with the pandemic still going on.
Hmm. Hmm. So interesting enough, yes, we're starting to get back into work. And there's there's two things. Obviously, a year ago, I did the show, the Netflix
Mhm,
show, and when they first started talking to me, I hadn't come out yet.
mhm,
And so they had me as a woman, and this and that. And that was, I think, in May, and by July, it was early May, so before the
mhm.
uprising happened. Then July hit, and by July, I'm like, I'm non-binary,
Yeah.
and this is it. I'm trans non-binary. This is my life, um and it's go. And then of course the show hit me back in August and said, you still want to do the show, and it did the show. And they never really asked me during the show pronouns, and honestly they called us by our names, which was really nice. It wasn't until after the filming, shortly before they were going to start
Mhm.
releasing that the show is going to be out, that they called me up on the phone and they're like, hey, we noticed on your social media that you're using they them pronouns, which I thought was really awesome of them. And
Yeah.
I had a really cool conversation with them. I said, listen, if during filming, you were using she, her, and you just it can't be edited, like I get that. That's okay. I'm not gonna lose
Right.
sleep. But I will tell you that if people watch the show and they follow me and they sort of like, you might get a little flack for it. But I want to make sure that people understand the timeline was it
Yeah.
happened. And I did come out in July, but we didn't really talk about that on the show. It was just your name,
Yeah.
you're working, you're getting things done. And most recently, I would say, since coming out, like I said, the work started to kind of come through again. I went down to Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, and I've been working on the Mothers of Gynecology project with an artist named Michelle Browder. And she had this vision like 10 years ago, about creating a monument to Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha. And they were enslaved women that were experimented but really tortured by James Marion Sims back in the day, who is known as the father of gynecology, but personally just trash.
Mhm.
Um, um, but she reached out to me, and she had reached out to me because she had heard of me from Lou, one of the other contestants
Yep.
on the show. And they're good friends, and he had been helping her out, and she expressed the need to continue working on the mothers. And she lovingly refers to them as the mothers. And so she reached out and told me about what she was doing, and told me about the importance of having, a black fabricator. And she didn't know that I was non-binary at the time, so woman. And then I just, gentle correction,
Mhm.
hey, actually I identify as this. um but she really warmed up. She's like, well, tell me more. I had no idea. This is amazing. And I said, hey, listen, I still have a strong relation, obviously, to gynecology. Um, so if it doesn't feel weird, I definitely want to support that, and I want to honor that by bringing as many women together as possible to continue fabricating on your piece. And so that's what we did. We got a group together, including Leah from the show,
Mhm.
and we went down there and got a really rich history lesson of Montgomery. I had no idea. And being black in the Midwest, especially, your education on slavery in general is eh, it's the size of a post-it note.
Yep. Yep.
And you really have to do digging to educate yourself, and it's not encouraged. And it
Mhm.
definitely wasn't encouraged as a youth. And so to hear the history and the stories um, of these, especially, I mean, of course, all humans, but the stories of the women especially really resonated with me. And like I said, I don't want to change or shift the past 40 years of my existence
Right.
because there's so much that I relate to as a non-binary human, right? And I think that stuff is super, and it's super important for me to do work that matters, to do work that's speaking truths, to
Hmm.
do work that is about education, to do work that is surrounded um, with with like I said, women and non-binary folks and trans folks and people of color. And so that is, that is my shift. And I want to say my main goal for the future in general is to stay along that
Hmm.
that path. Previous to that, was it a year ago? Well, not quite a year ago. We on MLK Day 2021, we we reconstructed the George Floyd square fist. It was made out of wood.
Hmm.
And, there were threats of people burning it down. And, the keepers of the square were worried. And so they asked Jordan, the original artist, if we could find a way to make it out of metal. Well, Jordan's media is not metal, and I don't actually think he's even a woodworker, but it was something that,
Right.
spoke to him. And he was just like, me and my friends got together and we created this, and it was a gift. And he hadn't intended it to be what it became.
Hmm.
The community made it what it was. And so to really make sure that the heart of the square stays the heart of the square, let's make it almost indestructible, right? And
Hmm.
so my beautiful work wife sent me a message and said, hey, got this thing, come on in, let's talk about it. Of course, it was let's reconstruct this fist. So the Fire Arts Center, it's run by badass women, by the
Hmm.
way. And so we get there and everybody is, huddled up, and we're just gonna talk about how we want to move forward. And I said, all right, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna need this team of humans. It's gonna take these many hours, and we're gonna go. And it was about 40, I would say it was, yeah, not 40 hours. It was probably 5 days, 4 days or 5 days. And there were on and off about of us consistently working on that. Myself heading up the crew, and we got it done and ready to ready to install in the square on MLK Day. We had about a half hour, 40-minute window to erect it. The thing is, it's huge. The
Yeah.
base of that
I've seen
the
pictures of
base of that
it.
thing,
Yeah.
yeah, the base of it is like 8 by, I don't remember if it's 8 by 8 or 8 by 10. I mean, it's huge, just the base alone. So, we made an internal frame for everything involving that, because once again, we're dealing with sheet metal.
Hmm.
And, we were tasked with making it look as much as possible like the wood one as we could,
Hmm.
with the amount of time that we had. And we had Jordan there with us. We had Jordan cutting and torching, and which
Hmm.
was awesome to be able to do. And as we were going to erect it, I called in some more reinforcements. There's still snow on the ground, there's ice everywhere. We literally like push this thing out into the street, and the community just gets together, and we, piece by piece, and this is how we're going to do it. And everybody's helping there. All hands are on deck. And when it's time to actually lift that fist up, I mean, we're talking about, I'm sure it was, I'm thinking it's close to about 1,400 pounds or so, just that portion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, everybody's just holding it up, and we've created bars to make sure that we're safely doing it as possible in the ice, in the
Yeah.
cold,
Yeah.
in Minnesota.
In Minnesota. Yeah.
In Minnesota. And boom, she's up. And it was such a seamless, beautiful experience to be able to do that. It was life changing for many of us. That that is so important for me. uh, and being able to showcase that and being visible. I've done some interviews since then, in regards to what I'm up to, and the importance of being visible. If we don't see, non-binary, trans, Black, queer people doing these things, then how are we ever going to know that we can do it too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of us are just like, yeah, we're going to go do it. But sometimes it's really, really important to just be holding space so other people know that they're welcome into that space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a conversation I have all the time, in the art community and in just the fab world as a whole, how we're holding space.
Hey makers. So today's podcast episode is sponsored in part by Alicia Van Osdal, who is the owner of Basil Blue Design Company. Alicia is a maker of all things, really. Her focus is on beautiful craftsmanship through woodworking, repurposing, refinishing, art, and sculpture. Her background includes 30 years of graphic design, logos, and branding. If you have an idea or concept and need a creative solution or graphic design, you can email Alicia directly at Alicia, and that is ALICIA at basilblue.com. Or you can visit her website at www.basilblue.com. And fun fact, Alicia actually designed the logo for Crafting Revolution. So that is an example of the impeccable work you can expect if that is something you are in the market for. So be sure to look up Alicia again at her website, basilblue.com. All right, let's get back into the action. I can definitely see it in the fab world. Not necessarily the case, but I do feel the art world has always probably been more queer friendly than
Absolutely.
Other spaces, and leaps and bounds probably out of fab world. I have background working with manufacturers, and so I tend to walk into spaces and be both the only woman in the space and the only queer person, at least out queer person in the space. So I know they have leaps and bounds to grow. So yeah, I do want to, I guess, touch on and talk a bit about the show, the Metal Shop Masters, because I binged it. I was not aware of yourself as a person before watching it. I had Leah previously on as a guest on the podcast, and so
that's my sister.
When she was putting it out there that the show was coming, I was like, oh, I have to watch this. I was like so psyched, and then after episode 1 and you were off, and I was pissed. and then episode 2, she was off and I was even more pissed. And I know, I had conversation with her, and I know you all became kind of a family of sorts. And so I don't want to like disrespect, any one person maker on the show at all. But I really was wrapping my mind around, like, I ended up, my wife and I started watching it together, and then she's like, oh, this is kind of your thing, you continue to watch it, and so she came back in on the last episode, and I was like, I'm just really finishing it out because I want to finish it out. And she's like, oh, who's it down to? And I said, the 2 straight white dudes. And it was kind of like that, really, like everybody else, because I feel like they did start with for a show of this kind, start with a fairly diverse group, right? More diverse than I expected. I'll put it that.
Correct.
But with Lou and Ray going right before the final episode, I was like, okay, there goes our last person of color, and there goes our last, female.
Yeah.
Um, and it just got me thinking, like, what would the world look like if we did an entire something that was on mass media, that there wasn't a single cis het white male involved? What would that actually look like? And what would it look like to compare apples to apples? Because I was also thinking, like, the people who got to the end, I don't doubt that they have worked hard and they have excellent skills on of their own merit. But I feel like I can say with pretty good certainty that they've probably been afforded more opportunities in their past to help grow that than others.
Yeah. I mean,
like, that's what I'm saying, like, not the comparing the apples to apples. Like, if we had people who all had equal running at all of the things, like all of the doors that get opened, that get opened without question when you're at the quote unquote top of the people hierarchy pyramid. It gives maybe them an opportunity to grow in certain skills that others just haven't had those doors opened. Like,
I just had this conversation with I run a fabrication shop here in Minneapolis called Love Green Industrial, and I was just having a conversation with a project manager about the industry and folks, minorities, anybody really that's not a cis white man, what happens when they're provided opportunities. It isn't just about, it's about equity, right? And making sure that everybody has an even playing field in general. And I'm not even talking about the show, I'm just in general.
In general.
And that's what we need to strive for. What are we doing to promote equity? What are we doing to make sure that we're all contributing in ways to support equity? And that's, like I said, that's the importance for me of doing the show in the first place, is to be visible, to get people excited, hopefully, about it, and to help as many people as possible who are interested in this industry. Like, if people are interested in this industry and want to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to support and help facilitate, next steps. As far as the show, of course it was a bummer to go, and Leah and I both, we talked about it, and we talk all the time. And am I sad that I didn't get to go further? Yeah, because I would have loved to do some of the other challenges. At the end of the day, if I were to reinvent that show a little bit, I think the thing that I would do is do it on a point system, not a challenge by challenge situation. I also think that the introduction of the avatars should have just been that. The fact that they kept Ray and Lou during that one cup, I'm not sending either one of you home. I'm like, wait a second, why didn't you just keep everybody through the avatar so people could introduce themselves and then have a competition? Boom, done. That would have been a different playing field, and it would have allowed for a little bit more context and to kind of maybe see where we could have gone, but there wasn't that opportunity. Now, I will say that I do believe that 100%, if you break down the challenge, well, guess what? Tom was really consistent. Is he the most flamboyantly artistic? No, but fabrication wise, technique, Tom's world, like, if you look at Tom's stuff, it's so polished, so intricate. I mean, what Tom does is like nobody else, and that's his baby. And so it makes sense for him as a fabricator to get where he got and then ultimately win. And as far as, Ivan is concerned, Ivan is a genius. Ivan is really, really impressive. And if people aren't paying attention, I know Ivan, dude's got a big chunk of my heart. I love that man. And I'm not gonna pretend to, and I'm not going to speak for assuming anybody's, I know Tom's world and Ivan's world. I know a little bit of Ivan's background, and no, he doesn't come from a silver spoon. Of course, he's got a, of course he's a white man, and he has all the privileges of a white man. But never has there been. I call him a unicorn. He knows he's a unicorn. I call him a lesbro. Um, and I say that lovingly to a few men in the world, and he's definitely one of those men. Very unique, open heart, like really good communicator, and a brilliant mind. Mm-hmm. So I was so happy to watch his journey through the show, and I'm congratulations to them both, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
I that's my dude, and I think that he's a gift. He's a mm-hmm. gift to the industry, and he's a gift to the art world for sure. So I think that doing what we did, I don't know if they're going to do another one,
right?
Doing what they did, I think they learned a lot. I would assume that the producers have been following all the social media and whatever.
Yeah.
And they've learned some things and areas to kind of improve. And, if it happens again, I think it's going to be better. This wasn't bad. It was a great experience. And, when you create, when you build something, you hope the next time is better. And I think that who knows what can come from this. Mm-hmm. People might see this and go, yeah, we do want a show, and we do want people that are, not typical anymore. And what does that actually look like?
Yeah.
I hope that that's what comes out of it for people.
Yeah. And I just want to before I say one other thing, I want to be crystal clear that, again, watching the show, I had no doubt that everybody who was there deserved to be there. Like, I don't hold it against Tom or Ivan for making it to the final at all.
No. Yeah.
But it was still kind of like, I was still rooting basically for everybody else.
Well, think about this. I mean, the way you look at it is, here, I've created a sculpture that was directly related to a very, very real and raw thing that was happening in my life at the time, and happening to Black America.
Yes.
And to have it viewed like it wasn't enough was, that's wild to me. And for Leah's sculpture, you got to think about Leah. Leah's also out of this world.
Yes.
And for me, it was like, you clearly didn't understand that very much was her avatar. Mm-hmm. Those monsters are her. Whether or not you understand her as those monsters, that is Leah's. And so the craftsmanship, the artistic brain, the finesse, I mean, it was just a thing of beauty. And so I was not upset, when it was Leah and myself, because we were like, oh my God, and I was like, I'm okay. Yeah. You're freaking amazing. And I love you dearly. And, here it is. And it was nothing but love for that. But, it was kind of, for me, it was hard. I honestly didn't think that the two of us were going home. Not to say that anybody deserved to go home. And that was the hard thing about that challenge, is how do you tell somebody to make an avatar of themselves and say that's not enough?
Exactly. Yes, I will say two things. I want to say broke my heart, but I also don't want to say, like, I'll stop stumbling over my words. Two things broke my heart. One being when you said, I'm representing the Black community here. Mm-hmm. And that was very, like, it brought me back to, I also watch Netflix's Blown Away, the glass blowing show. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I love that too. And they had a Black man glassblower on there, I think in season 2. And he said all he hoped to get out of it, not even to win, all he hoped was to be able to show people that black hands can make beautiful things.
And that's absolutely correct.
And that, that's what, when you said that, that's what I went back to. And it broke my heart because I'm like, for fuck's sake, it is not your job it shouldn't be your job to like have to show the world this.
Yeah.
Like, this is something we should all just know.
Yeah.
And the other piece is when they asked you if your movement was enough and you said, yes, this is enough movement. I'm like, yes, it's fucking enough movement.
Thank you.
I was like, oh.
I'm glad people caught that, and it's funny because there was so much more context to that story. And, because they asked you, tell us about your piece, tell us about, what's going on. And I expressed to them, I am non-binary, trans, freaking queer, black, and it's 2020 and we're in the middle of a pandemic and we're just coming out of the uprising and, and expressing that, we were literally fearing for our lives, and you don't understand what they showed you on TV versus what was actually happening were two different things. And this is a cultivation of everything that I've, and I just let it all out, and it didn't get on there. It was not on the show. And to your point of the artist on the glass blowing competition, same thing. They asked, why are you here? Yeah. Are you excited? Like whatever. I'm here for my people.
Right.
I'm here to represent. I'm doing this in hopes that at least one human goes, yes, you're here. And that's all that mattered. And that's absolutely what I got. I've gotten nothing but really warm, wonderful messages from people, and people from all over the world, which has been pretty rad. Saying I'm so glad you're visible and you're there.
Yeah.
And literally only 2 angry messages from the typical human that you would think would be angry, and that was it. It's been beautiful.
Well, I'm glad of that. And I also will continue to hope that the world changes as fast as we need it to. And I'll leave it at that. Well, Seven, this has been a beautiful conversation. I thank you very much for chatting with me, and we're at the end of our time. So I want to make sure I give you a chance to tell people where they can find you and kind of keep up with what you're working on.
Yeah, you can. I have a website that's, it started. The wife was in a hurry. She's like, I got to get you a website. The7bailey.com. Or you can follow me on Instagram, because that's the most, I think I'm most active on that one, which is Butch Charming. Also, my wife gave me that one. You'll follow the art and fab world, and also the burlesque world, because we produce and put on burlesque shows, and I actually host shows as well. So that's always interesting. And I rarely use
chair
Twitter,
part of the shows, because I feel like the chair should be part of the shows.
Now that you've requested it, maybe the chair needs to make an appearance somewhere. But truly though, if you're ever up here and you want to go to a show or something, you're invited, and I will. Awesome. It'll be on me. But yeah, hit me up, IG, shoot me messages. I respond. I really enjoy people reaching out and engaging. And yeah, it's a wild experience. I went from not engaging so much on social media to like every day now. And that's a lot for a 40-year-old that was like, technology.
Yeah.
It's a phone. I can, I use it to look up things here and there, and
Yep.
It's 2021. I got to get it together.
That's right. That's right.
But I really appreciate you reaching out, and doing these podcasts. What a wonderful thing to do and to be able to share with the world in general. So please keep doing the good work that you're doing.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for chatting today.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, that was 7 Bailey, and I will include the links on how to follow along with them in today's show notes, which you can find in the description for the episode on whatever podcast app you're listening to this on. Or if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, you can check the description down below. If you enjoyed today's episode, please, please, please make sure to subscribe, follow along, and review over on iTunes and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and share with a friend. I am all about the sharing. Share with a friend so they can hear the amazing journeys of all of these female and non-binary makers as well. While you're at it, follow along with the podcast over on Instagram at Crafting a Revolution. You will see when new episodes come up over there, in addition to any other fun things we might be talking about over there as well. When I am not making podcasts and talking to amazing guests, you can find me power carving, dancing, just being an overall goofball over at Freeman Furnishings on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. And you can find my website at freemanfurnishings.com, where you can also find each episode of the podcast, along with whatever else I've got going on, what classes I have coming up, all that good stuff. So come on over at Freeman Furnishings, say hello, tell me that you found me through the podcast. I always love to hear that. And yeah, it's Friday. We're going into the weekend. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. And as always, let's go craft a revolution. She, her, they got something they want to say. Solution for the toxic masculinity.